Juneteenth is a significant date in our history as we think about freedom in the nation, and particularly the notion of freedom as it applies to everyone. The Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on January 1st, 1863. And what's important about that is that while it applied to all enslaved African Americans throughout the states that had seceded from the Union, many of the enslavers in those states chose not to inform the enslaved that they were now free. The Civil War ensued in order to enforce that freedom. And so by June 19th, 1865, it had finally reached Texas. And so very important to note the role that Texas played during this period. On June 19th, you have Major General Granger of the Union Army who marched into Galveston, Texas, took his place in the public arena and was able to inform people that, in fact, all enslaved African Americans in Texas, at least about 250,000, had their freedom. While they were technically already free because the legislation had passed and gone into effect, it took a war and it took that movement west, which took 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. You'll see that around 1866 is when people mark like really the first, I guess, official formal occasion of Juneteenth celebration. And it's my understanding at this time we have about 47 states that have created Juneteenth celebrations, as well as the District of Columbia. The celebrations include from barbecue to the tradition of drinking red soda, to the tradition of having sermons, to the tradition of doing educational activities, self-awareness activities, community building activities.
So community to community, you'll hear about 20 or 30, Juneteenth celebrations, all the block parties, all the different ways that we celebrate, as well as the similar ways that we look at this day and have fun with it. But then you'll also hear about 5 or 6 major celebrations across the city. At the African American Museum in Philadelphia, Juneteenth is our birthday in 1976. So for every year, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on what it means to be an institution.
I think Juneteenth is being seen as this holiday that will allow us to reflect on the African American experience. There are many companies, and as I mentioned, there are states that have acknowledged the significance of Juneteenth. It is a step in the right direction, but it's a step of many steps that have to take place. And even with that, with these holidays being designated as a day off for staff, it really should be a day off for people to educate themselves on the events of Juneteenth, educate themselves on why it took an Emancipation Proclamation, why it took a Civil War, and why freedom matters. And so here we are today, and we have to reckon with this idea of the place. What is the place of African Americans in this nation? If we're really about freedom, justice, and equality, then that's our place. To be free, to have justice, and to be equal. And so Juneteenth provides us an opportunity to reflect on that history.